Topping Talks. 105 hours a week, can't be beat. Welcome to Topping Talks. Topping Talks is a Topping Tribune production. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, see that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or a business owner, reach out to the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, still giving away a free flamethrower with every IT purchase with Picatinny rail adapters. You can mount it to any standard AR-15 like all awesome accessories can be. Go to toppingtechnologies.com to learn more. Click the flamethrower button and you get to see me shooting a flamethrower. And lastly, without further ado, today I'm proud to say I'm interviewing Will Thomas, who's an adjunct professor at Collin College. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
So why did you back the clock a couple years? How did you first get into IT?
Well, so I guess the critical step in IT was flunking out of electrical engineering in college. So it steered me over to computer science, which is what my dad, when you're not sure, you tend to do what your dad did, right? And I went computer science, then had an internship before I graduated and quickly realized I spent 4 years learning how to program and realized before I graduated I never want to program, and got really interested in integration and networking and ultimately cybersecurity through that sort of first inflection point in my career.
That's awesome. So you just didn't want to deal with the servers? I know those were really hot back in the day.
Oh, they weren't even servers. I'm old enough that programming back then was big iron down in the basement. So, it wasn't even cool that we had servers and compacts and things like that. It was, I didn't use punch cards. I'm not quite that old, but sitting down on terminals in the basement of the computer science building just wasn't really that sexy.
No, not too much.
Yeah.
Then what was your first job when getting into IT, and what was it like getting it, and what was the industry?
So I interned at MCI Communications, which was a pretty innovative, different industry, but yet still technology related. I interned with them, and then took my first IT job there, working for working for them here locally in Richardson. They were a DC based company generally, and I technically I was in network engineering, but the telecom network. But turned out I had a knack for IT stuff, making IT stuff work. My first computer was an HP 9000 Unix system, which was the size of 3 filing cabinets underneath my desk.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so
how much did that weigh?
I never tried to lift it, but moving it wasn't easy. But that's, again, that kind of stirred me as like, okay, between the programming I did in college and between this giant HP 9000 that I had underneath my desk, I realized these things are expensive. And the one thing I remember noticing was that all the administrative types, we don't say secretaries anymore, you can cut that if you want, but, they all had Wang word processors. They had these, and if I recall, they cost about $10,000 or $12,000 a piece, and that's literally all they did.
And what year was that?
That would have been 89-ish.
So that's like $58 million now with inflation.
Right. And so they would have these machines simply to write a document and print it or send it with MCI mail. They had very early email there. And I just looked at these machines, and as they hire people and there's a growing company, and I said, $10,000 for that thing? There's got to be a better way. And that came up over and over and over as I was doing sort of my network engineering, my telco network engineering. And I just kept, I read PC Magazine. It was a free magazine back then, and I just found it interesting. I'd read and I'd say, hey, this sounds like a product that might help. And I'd come to my boss, and they'd give me money, and I'd solve a problem that we didn't even know we had. And next thing you know, I was an IT guy.
That's awesome. Do you remember the first suggestion you had, and what was it, technology? Or
It was
a couple
probably
highlights?
those Wang word processors, because like I said, they were I want to say $10,000 a piece, and you could buy an emulation board. There were some PCs in the department for specific things. Not everybody had one, but you could buy an emulation board for about $1,500. So I said, $1,500 is way better than $10,000.
Oh yeah.
Let's see how these things work. And everybody, everybody loved them, and so we made that a ubiquitous thing. So
That's awesome.
similarly, another project, I guess is my other project I did when I was an intern. We were working on an HP 9000. Again, telco, there was a lab where we would test parts. It was a Rockwell 4 gigahertz sideband radio that we transmitted voice to LA, and had a lot of hardware problems. So we'd bring these parts back out of the field. We'd test them ourselves. MCI was having a beef with the manufacturer. And so we had to prove to them what the fail rate and some of those kind of things that, the engineers were doing that. But similar to the Wang word processors, there was this extraordinarily expensive computer sitting there doing the most basic database function. And every time they'd bring a new position up in the labs, they would go and buy these multi-$1,000 a dumb terminal, right? That could do nothing. And next thing you know, they want to start doing some PC things. I'm like, why do we keep spending more money on terminals that do nothing when I can put a PC right here? And lo and behold, ultimately we wound up moving the database into DBase 4, moving it off of sort of proprietary old school HP database systems and into a PC-based system. And really, I just found that really interesting, saving money and doing things a different way.
That's awesome. I don't think a lot of people remember how big HP used to be back in the day with all the proprietary systems, their hardware, the infrastructure. I mean, they used to be, they're still around, of course, but back in the day, they were huge.
Yeah.
Not just calculators.
Yeah. They definitely, they were pinnacle of business systems. Them and HP, or them and IBM were really, if you were running a business and you had data that needed to be crunched, stored, or apped up in some way, HP and IBM, you had a relationship with those if you were, American corporation. So.
Oh, yeah. And nowadays, HP, just think of, the two companies, printers, one company, HP Inc., and then another company over data center infrastructure, but not so much in terms of databases, the actual, software in that regard.
Yeah. Well, everything got commoditized, and that's just a constant trend is whatever you make, whatever innovation you had as a company, and, IBM went through this as well, right? Eventually, the innovative economy that is our, America will commoditize what you used to do and find some way to do things cheaper, faster, smarter, and you better constantly evolve your technology. So, leads us to the HP that you know today, right?
That's very true.
But once great company, I do have fun. From a pure engineering, nerdy programmer kind of standpoint, those were fantastic platforms. I loved working on HP UX, but they were expensive, they were cumbersome, and there were newer options, and that's how I got into IT.
That's awesome. Do you remember your next role, or where do you go from there?
I went from there, so I had a little bit of a knack for that, and at MCI, and there was a company called Micro Solutions, which was Mark Cuban's first company. He made his first $1 million off of that.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, Micro Solutions, and so they were the ones that were running around MCI, deploying compact servers and stringing up coax Ethernet cables to connect things. And I was just fascinated by the work those guys were doing, so I befriended a lot of them, and ultimately wound up going to Micro Solutions. So, as much as I enjoyed what I was doing for MCI, I sometimes when I give career advice, I talk about it's fun to build, or it's fun to figure things out. It's fun to build things, but eventually your technology gets to the point of, I called it putting the paper in the printer thing. And literally I would have people call me and say, hey, the printer's not working. And I'm like, okay, when most of my trouble tickets are that the printer's not working, I don't want to do this anymore, right? I wanted to do the hard part. And I quickly realized that there's a market for this. And so I went to Avar, and great people, great company, great culture. By the way, Cuban was a amazing guy to work for.
And I was going to say, for the folks who don't know, VAR means value-added resellers, a common indirect sales model for everything from cars to technology solutions.
Yep, like topping. I believe you invoked VAR as your line of business here as well, right?
Topping technologies, services and products, hardware, software. But yeah, what was it like working with Mark Cuban, and what was the environment like? And can you tell us about a couple of business use cases you worked on, or your favorite deployments or technologies?
Sure. Probably the first there was some really boring technology. Things that we take for granted today were some of the things that I was relatively fresh out of college, and I was the junior guy on the team. So sometimes I would get thrown to, there's a new product on the market. Nobody really knows much about it, and they're busy. Let's throw Thomas at it. Hey, Thomas, fly to California, go take the training class, come back and tell us what's good for. And so I wound up being that guy a lot. And even including, it's embarrassing to say, but I'm a WordPerfect certified engineer, because once upon a time, email was hard, and WordPerfect had an email system. And I literally studied, okay, the message moves from this folder, and then it gets tagged with this, and we do this, and we authenticate that, and then we transmit it with that. And it was that kind of, email was hard, again, once upon a time. And I remember being the WordPerfect certified engineer. I don't put that on my resume anymore. It kind of cracks me up that I did that. But that was some stuff. But the real one that I got started with at the time, which I talk about, what it tells me about the technology industry too, was Banyan Vines. And They were a big Banyan Vine shop. I got a certified Banyan engineer, which was, other than my CCIE, was probably the toughest cert
Really?
that I ever got. And it was just amazing technology. It was Unix based. The Marines used it in battlefield operations in the first Gulf War. It was this amazing technology.
And what did it do in simple terms?
So it was they would call themselves at the time a network operating system. So they were servers, right? And they would have a dedicated print servers. And I know it's funny to say these things out loud now, print servers, but that was new, right?
Yeah.
So instead of a printer being attached to a discrete system, you could put it on the network and anybody could print to it. Email, and their claim to fame as a technology was, in the end, they called it Street Talk was the way they marketed it, but it was a directory service. It was a hierarchical directory structure when that didn't exist. So everything in a Banyan Vines network all was relatively equal, but this great Street Talk directory service kept everything organized so you could find any resource. If you wanted to print to in Mosul, Iraq, if you wanted to print, it was pretty easy to find the printer because of this directory. Again, things we take for granted now, but they were bleeding edge at the time and absolutely fascinating. Another thing that they did back in the integration standpoint is they had a 3270 emulator. So as much as we were trying to get off the big iron of IBM and things like that, you had these front-end processors that would cost $1 million for IBM, and you could put an IP stack on it for, I think, about $500,000 at the time if you were trying to connect to it. Or you could put these little 3270 emulator boards in your Banyan Vine server, and everybody on the Banyan Vine networks could open a terminal session to the IBM with very little hardware. And so little things like that made a huge difference.
That's incredible.
And it was relatively plug and play. Back when networking was harder, you literally could just bring up a server and it would find find the other servers, probably security in retrospect, probably
Right.
security risk at the time, but it would it'd grow like vines. Again, the banyan tree, if you've ever seen one in Hawaii, it's famous for the roots go down and they sort of become another tree.
Yeah.
And that kind of vines mentality is that you just plug all these resources in, they find themselves, they organize themselves in this Street Talk directory and made it fairly, the usability was very good. And again, it was Unix based. You could do a lot of things underneath the covers. It was not quite TCP/IP at the time, but it was IP-like protocol. So it was turns out to be very compatible in the end. And I loved it. As an engineer fresh out of college, as a super nerd, I said, this is the coolest stuff I've ever seen. I love it. And I did that. I got really dedicated to doing that for a few years. And then Novell came into the marketplace and just crushed them, put them out of business. And so then I rotated over and did Novell for a couple of years. And then Microsoft crushed them, put them out of business. And I started realizing that the coolest technology doesn't always win. And sometimes there's other factors that go into just what makes the engineer like and respect technology,
That is something that a lot of people can't get their minds around. It's like, what do you mean the best technology didn't always win, or the shiniest tool didn't win? It's like, or there's sometimes like, what do you mean this is the cheapest option? It's like, yeah, there's a lot of variables folks don't think about. Sometimes the best solution doesn't always win.
Yeah.
It's like, kind of cliche, but sometimes it's a budget issue or a tech adoption issue. It's like, yeah, it takes a lot of resources to train all your employees on a new tool. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you need to train them on a whole new technology. It's like, or just renew whatever current technology you're using that's good enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where, well, Microsoft, sometimes the best technology doesn't always win, but Microsoft usually does.
Turns out the best licensing model sometimes wins.
That's true.
Shot at Microsoft anyway. But
well, Monopoly is an easy game to. I mean, if you have all the properties, it's pretty easy to win the game Monopoly. It's like, what doesn't Microsoft do in 2025?
That's one thing I saw change though. So I got out of college in the 90s, and all these stories I'm talking about were in the 90s. And I call sometimes that the field of dreams time of the kind of the internet and IT, in that companies weren't even sure what they would need these new IT technologies for, but they kind of take your word for it and they cut a check and let you deploy some technology and then kind of learn, hey, what good came of it. Field of dreams. If you build it, they will come, right?
Yeah.
And that was, as an engineer, and I'm like, I could run and just chase whatever the newest technology was. That was fantastic. Then the tech bubble burst in 2001.
Yep.
And it seems like fundamentally the economy, or not the economy, but the corporate culture changed, where now there has to be business justification and return on investment. All the things that, of course, we know you need to run a business.
Proof of concept, run it first before you buy it. Well, obviously demos, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Sustainability of products, operational costs, all those kind of things came in after 2001. But in the 90s, it was great. It's like, if you could do it, you just did it, because we'll figure out what it's good for after the fact, right?
I was going to say, sales reps must have been really happy back then. That's easy.
It was an engineer's world. When I started at Cisco, the When I started at Cisco, Cisco made 6 products: 3 routers, 3 switches, small, medium, large, small, medium, large. That's what they made. And the sales cycle at the time was cut through switching, and store and forward switching was sort of a religious debate in the switching world, which was a lot of money. And that was our sales cycle. We'd go out and argue about, well, here's my chipset, and here you can follow the bits in from this ingress is this port. It goes through this, and we do some operations to it, and it comes out here. And Cisco had a cut-through switch, but it was a couple of nanoseconds slower than a store and forward switch. And Cisco wound up, all the Catalyst switches were store and forward, and that was a sales cycle. And it wasn't anything about return on investment or how do we sustain this thing or any of the business outcomes that you might try to drive even with cybersecurity technologies these days. It was just like, okay, who can squeeze a couple of nanoseconds out of a packet moving around?
Yeah.
So it was nerd's paradise at the time, right?
All about the performance.
Yeah.
What tech's the best.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think at one time Cisco had 6 products, and I think now they have like 68,000 products.
Yeah, sometimes I say that people think of 6 product families. No, I mean literally 6 products: small, medium, large switch, small, medium, large router. That's what they made.
That's almost unfathomable these days, where obviously they do firewalls, hyperconverged, endpoint security, SIM solutions, cloud security, phones. Obviously, the plethora of technologies they have now is almost mind-boggling.
Yeah.
It's like they are enormously diverse with their portfolio these days.
And it's kind of funny is if you remember the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin, when the phone book comes and he gets all excited, he looks up and he's in the phone book and he's pretty excited. We used to have every 90 days at Cisco, because we only made 6 products, because it was a very techie sales cycle at the time. Every quarter they would put out a product guide, paper. Yes, it'd show up in your mail slot. Here's a little product guide, a couple hundred pages on what Cisco makes and little drawings about how the parts fit into the routers and things like that. And all of us sales engineers, solutions engineers, would read it cover to cover, just sit down and go, oh, yeah, the new product guide's here. And we sit there and read that and see how cables get attached. It was all in there. It was amazing. And again, nerd's paradise back then.
That's awesome. I was going to say, now I'm really curious, was it full of color or black and white?
It was probably black and white back in the day. Of course, it's long gone now. Now it's a website. But,
of course, yeah.
Yeah, but for the longest time, you had those quarterly product guides that you just devour them.
So almost oddly reminiscent of the Sears catalog. Once, back in the day, everything was paper. And it was almost like a fun read. You could see everything about it. But yeah, I think in terms of companies with products, I know Uline is really proud to have their booklets that they hand out for packaging materials and office supplies. Is it the McMaster or McAllister? I think it's McMaster. It's for materials and hard goods. But it's legendary for engineers, who are physical engineers and builders and craftsmen. But you have to spend a certain amount of money before you get one of those guidebooks from them. But I think it's going to drive me crazy. I'll have to Google it later. But yeah, in terms of physical reading materials, I think actually nowadays I'm one of the few people I know who actually buy physical books. But yeah, back in the day, I can't imagine how much fun that'd be to get that Cisco catalog.
Yeah. And further, if you're really the engineer, and I guarantee there's somebody in your listening audience that still has those, but the set of the iOS, the actual configuration guides, but they look like a set of encyclopedias, because they literally would take 2 to 3 feet of shelf space in your cube.
Oh my God.
And it was literally every iOS command and every option printed out. And again, I didn't read those cover to cover, but you kept them nearby, and so you could solve your customers' problems with that, the Library of Congress, so to speak, version of Cisco iOS.
So what was it like working at Cisco? How long were you there?
23 years.
Oh, wow.
So it changed. I actually worked for 3 different companies that all happened to have been named Cisco. So Cisco 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0 were very different animals. 1.0 was what I would say was engineering led. And again, it's what I just described, how the sales cycle worked and how we made the products. The 90s version of that was very engineering led company. It's pretty fun. Again, I was a young guy that enjoyed the tech. And then 2.0 is probably after the tech bubble, when we started having to cost justify things. And John Chambers, the legendary leader there, he was a salesman by DNA, even though he was a great leader in many ways. But we came probably a little bit more of a sales led, because we realized we were solving customer problems. We're not just throwing tech at people. And so the culture changed a little bit in what I would call 2.0. And then ultimately, company got big and became 3.0. So.
Oh yeah. Out of curiosity, do you think they'll ever make a positive or return on investment for buying Splunk for, was it $26 billion?
Yeah, that might be too pointed of a question because I came from Palo when Palo was there, and I would say that's a legacy product. That's certainly what Palo Alto Networks would say, and there's truth to it. I probably don't know enough about the economics of can they squeeze a return out of Splunk, but it definitely feels like a fantastic piece of technology whose time is evolving. Let's just say
It's a very nice way of saying it.
yeah, trying my best, right? So
Yeah, I'm extremely skeptical.
it can't possibly make sense, honestly, from an investment. It can't. There's too much money. But Cisco has a long history of spending an enormous amount of money for a company that they may or may not get to it. But in the past, and I don't remember if Splunk was. I don't remember the terms of it. But a lot of times in the past, they were they pay a big price for a company, but what they're really doing is selling stock. Right? It was really a stock transfer, at least
this was
partially.
cash though.
Yeah, so that's different. But back in the day, we spent billions of dollars for other technologies that probably didn't pan out.
Yeah.
But if you're really trading an inflated stock, you're diluting shares a little bit and getting some interesting technology. Some patents and talent, which is a lot of times what Cisco was really buying was the
people and the people,
the
intellectual
people and
property.
the ability, the culture, and very few. There were a lot of products that never really saw the light of day or became features in other products, and that was a good strategy for them. Obviously, it worked.
Oh, yeah, very true. Usually, you buy technology, then later you incorporate it into all of your other products as well.
Yeah.
That makes sense, but for $26 billion, I don't know. And anecdotally, I don't know, past 5-10 years, it seems like Splunk has just lost market share left and right with competitive solutions that need less resources to run.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting decision. We'll see how it pans out.
Yeah.
I do think it'll be more successful than when they bought Flip, those USB cameras.
So what you're saying when they bought a consumer digital camera just before the iPhone came out? Yeah, that was great timing, right? You may not remember their little Android-based tablet just before the iPad came out. So that's a great ideas, terrible timing.
Precisely. Well, I mean, and then everyone made that mistake. I know Hewlett-Packard and BlackBerry had their own tablets, and everyone was trying really hard. But, I mean, the thing, they're trying to do their own software, which, I mean, again, it all is about software at the end of the day, but Android and Apple just destroyed every competitive solution on the planet.
Yeah.
So I remember BlackBerry's last tablet and even Hewlett-Packard's last tablet, I think only then really started to be more Android open. Mm-hmm. But at that point, they just really couldn't compete. I remember HP a couple years ago did a fire sale, just like, you get a tablet for like $100.
Yeah.
My friends, they're like, or no, my parents, some of the parents that I know, they asked me for advice, like, oh yeah, my Johnny wants the tech stuff. Should we get this? And they was like, oh my gosh, it's like topping. And iPad's $1,000. This is like $200. Should I get it? I'm like, it'll be nice to work for a little while, but they're not supporting that long term. Mm-hmm. They're not going to get updates. I'm kind of security oriented, so not going to be security packed. Like, it's proprietary. And just, I told them not to do it just because, again, it's going to be a product that's not supported long term. So it'll be nice and shiny for now. But to Apple's credit, they'll support stuff. Obviously they don't do updates forever, but they're a pretty stable company. They'll be more around with their legacy products. But yeah, there's a while where everyone was trying to make a tablet. That was the new tech that was going to change the world. And in a lot of ways it did.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of like phones.
Bad timing, right?
Oh, precisely. I mean,
Cisco's never good at consumer things. They kept dabbling in consumer, set-top boxes with Scientific Atlantic, a lot of things like that. And that just, their support model was expensive because support is expensive, right? Yeah. And Cisco had a fairly expensive support model. So when you started getting into the consumer or anything that touched a consumer, the support costs became difficult.
Because they sold off Linsky's, right? For a couple of years, they had the consumer grade, Wi-Fi that they sell at routers, Wi-Fi that they sell at like Walmart and stuff. And I thought they divested that again. They kind of tiptoe in and out of that realm. Yeah. But
I think it was bad timing because, again, that's another thing. Is Linksys was great products, and frankly, I'd buy it and run it in my house. Yeah. But it was commoditized, right, which wasn't really their forte.
And then you also saw a big pendulum swing in terms of like, well, you're at home, who takes care of the Wi-Fi? Now a lot of the telecom providers are giving it to you. Well, they say for free, it's cost is built in.
Sure.
And some of them won't even allow you to bring your own devices or your own modems or your own hardware. So the use case for the average consumer isn't to the point where they would need to go to a Walmart or Target or wherever and buy a standalone system to plug in at home. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's outlier situations with density of the house, too many rooms, yada. But that's another kind of pendulum swing where that used to be very necessitated, but now the telecom companies kind of took over that. So I actually debate how much even like Walmart makes selling that stuff at the stores.
Yeah, ease of use wins in the end, turns out, right? And that was my banyan to Novell to Microsoft that I learned in the 90s is if you make a technology that's let's say 2/3 is good, but 25% of the expense, or it's easy to use. Sorry, right? And if it's easy to use and almost as good, it's going to win in the marketplace.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, back on your Splunk question, though, I did have one last. The one thing I think Cisco did with Splunk was, or I think that matters, and I don't know that you can put a number on it. Why I can't say if it's a good acquisition or not, but they bought a customer base and they bought credibility with certain customers. I don't know what the value of that is for them to make a business decision, but I don't think the technology itself and the revenue streams will work out well for them. But that credibility and relationship with the security buying center may be a good strategy for them.
I've considered that too, because that is one of the top reasons for acquisitions is you're not just buying the tech, but you're also buying the customers, existing contracts with them. But I mean, Cisco has well above 58% market share, or they have, 58% of customers have Cisco hardware in some way or another, usually networking, of course.
Yeah.
So it's like, how many additional clients are they really buying? Now, with that being said, the remaining people who have Splunk are quite large companies. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely there's some meat to that theory, so to say.
Yeah.
Because again, there are still a couple companies that are against Cisco, or they're holdouts against Cisco. That might help them get in the door, so to say. If they already have that relationship with their security team, and Cisco wants to do obviously more software, more security. Yeah. They invest a lot of money into Umbrella, which is an interesting name for security product. But yeah, that might be a way to build it out. But I just couldn't get over that staggering price of they got the cash.
It was stunning, right?
$26 billion for a product that was dramatically losing market share.
Yeah.
It was very unusual. But then at the end of the day, I think it was the best. If you're a Splunk, I think it's the best decision of all time because they are losing market share. They needed
the timing was perfect for them.
Yeah, to sell out. Yeah, and I mean, who else could have bought them realistically? Maybe only Microsoft. Well, maybe Hewlett Packard. Maybe Dell.
Google was looking at them too pretty hard. So
yeah, because they bought Trellix, or they renamed. Yeah, because Mandiant into Trellix. Yeah, so that's another thing. And when you get that big, there's only a couple of people that could conceivably even buy you out. And then you also have to worry about with Google. It's like, would they be allowed to buy them out? Because SEC might say, you're already big enough. We're not going to expand in that area. Yeah. So that's also something to consider. It's like, that means the number of people that could buy them are pretty limited as well.
But it's, back on the concept of like everybody's you said 58% market share. I'd be surprised if it's not higher than that. But when I worked at Cisco, I always say everybody is a Cisco customer because everybody's buying something from Cisco. Not quite literally true, but I would be 58% seems low, right? Yeah. Of the Fortune 1,000 companies, what percent of those have Cisco products deployed? It's got to be a huge percent. But what I found, at Cisco, when we'd move into a new technology space like security in the early 2000s, the security buying center was very distinct and different, and we had absolutely zero credibility with the security. In fact, we probably had negative credibility with them because they saw the networks as the problem, and so sometimes Cisco come in and they want to hear it, and then. Further, when Cisco first bought a local Dallas company here, Celsius, and went into IP telephony, changed that industry dramatically. Right. It was the same thing as we've got this amazing technology. Let's go out and talk to our big corporate customers, but then we'd have to sit with the telecom team who didn't even know us. And I remember Texas Instruments in particular was one of the customers I was working with, and I had a great relationship with the IT people, and we were going to talk about voice over IP, and we brought in we had one big meeting with the telco team and the IT team, and literally I, as the vendor, was introducing them to each other, even though they were TI employees. So back to the importance of buying centers, and everybody's a Cisco customer, but yet there are different buying centers within a customer. And I would say probably at Cisco, just as I was exiting IoT, it was honestly is my favorite job I've ever had, both as a techie and as a leader. But the IoT space was absolutely fascinating to me. But it's very much the same thing as when you go to a customer who may be consuming your technology, whether it's Palo firewalls or Cisco routers or whatever it may be. When you go and talk about an IoT project, it's a completely they don't even know the IT people, right? You're going to a different center. You're going to the operational centers. You're going to strip mines and F1 tracks and ports and airports and anyway, it's a lot of fun. And really, you're dealing with the business leaders at that point. IT's sometimes not even in the room.
Oh, very true.
Yeah.
So again, I think there's some more validation to that argument as well. Because again, yeah, you're right. Especially the bigger companies. I mean, sometimes they have teams that don't even talk to each other at all. So just to bridge that gap is invaluable as well.
Yeah, sometimes they actively undermine each other. If they do know each other, they undermine each other. So we're not doing what that team's doing. So
Or they see it as almost see it as combative. Be like, oh yeah, well we got the budget. Maybe we can steal from their budget.
yeah,
It's like, oh no, we need it more. We need a boss or boss's boss's boss. We need it. We're more important. Our project matters more.
yeah.
That gets into the whole politics of business, all that kind of fun stuff. And I personally find that part boring. Be like, let's just get the best technology to work. But obviously, everyone's got their own budget and ideals, and they got their own vision and their own departments and their goals and all that kind of things as well. Of course.
Well, that's what I learned over my career too. Is like I said, in the '90s, we kind of went out and we tried to figure out what's the best technology, and we just deployed it, get the green light, and then figure it out, right? But I would say in my wisdom since then is like, okay, what's the best technology? Isn't whatever's the most technically elegant or newest or more cutting edge. It's what's gonna support the business, what's gonna be operable. Especially with security technologies. When I was at Palo, there's a lot of technology that's you can buy amazing capability, and it's virtually impossible to get it deployed, right? And I think I made up the word deployability, but that was something I was talking about at Palo Alto all the time. Is somebody else may or may not have a piece of, I remember agents on the endpoint being one of them, that you could argue that somebody's got a better agent that they would put on the endpoint, but that's fine. But if you buy that agent and only turn on 10% of its functionality, 20% of its functionality, have you really gotten more value out of it? Or if we've got something that, okay, maybe we've got a product that only does 80% of what that product does, but the deployability is very good, so that you can get 60% of the capability out of it, 70%, that's actually your better buying decision, right? And a better technology decision as well.
Absolutely. So, what was it like working at Palo?
Palo's fantastic, right? So I got excited about going there. I was late in career when I went there, and I always, I think because I'd grown up for 23 years through Cisco and kind of seen, from the early innovative skunkworks kind of times to the big corporate behemoth that it had become, I was really attracted to a company that seemed to have the balance between critical mass, so they could make an impact on not just technologically, but also on the marketplace. And I think we'd all agree cybersecurity needs to change. I think that's still the case. But I saw them as kind of the sweet spot of being technically innovative, but yet having critical mass to actually accomplish something. Mm-hmm. And I found that fascinating. And so I went there purely because it sounds idealistic to think, well, this is a company that can change the industry. But I kind of stand by that, and I think they're doing it right.
Absolutely.
Although they're struggling with their big company pains as well, of course, just like any of them. But with success comes big company pains.
Oh, exactly. You're always going to have problems in life. There's going to be different problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're probably still one of the best companies out there in terms of innovation, especially when everyone thinks they're kind of cliche. A company gets known for one thing, like Proofpoint, everyone thinks is the email gateway company. Yeah, they do a lot of things, but still what they're known for.
Yeah.
Palo, they do a lot of things, but they're still known for firewalls. And they've done a lot of great things since, especially cloud security and endpoint. But yeah, people still think of them as, firewall companies. Like, they make the best firewalls. Yes, that's true. But it's like, they do a lot of exceptionally really cool things, a lot of innovation over there.
Well, you mentioned, I know AI, personally, I can't even say, I'm going to discredit your podcast right now and say, I hate AI. And it's a stupid thing to say just because I'm a computer science nerd enough to think there's no such thing as artificial intelligence. People get all wrapped up in thinking computers. There's no such thing. There's just a better computer program. Now, that's foolish of me to say out loud, but clearly AI is a thing. It's a technique, right, that's happening now. But it's really important in the cybersecurity industry because, and because there's not enough human beings that can respond fast enough. Mm-hmm. And not to be a commercial for Palo Alto, but probably the best product the most interesting product, and I would say is kind of the culmination of why I went there. I, again, don't want to be a Palo commercial necessarily, but I genuinely believe the XIM product is an industry changer, right? Mm-hmm. And there's other products that are trying to.
And then for the folks who don't know, what is that product?
It is it's its own category, I would say. I'd say it competes with Splunk. So to link back to our conversation with kind of the old way we tried to do things with Splunk, but really trying to go forward is we want to automate. We want to take all the different data sources that we can get. We're going to use artificial intelligence, no matter what I think about the term artificial intelligence. I think Palo internally was talking about it in the context of machine learning before AI became the buzzword that everybody wants to hear about. But machine learning and take all that data and draw better conclusions, right? It's kind of fundamentally the same thing that Splunk has tried to do, but Splunk's history, its legacy is to write rules that correlate things. And in a time of AI, the more we can just kind of turn the agents loose to find things that look sus, that's a better approach. Now, I know Splunk is working on integrating that and extending their products as well. But Palo kind of did that because they had the telemetry from a firewall, and of course a Palo firewall is not just a firewall anymore. It's a proxy, it's an IPS sensor, it's a mail gateway, it's really a unified security tool that generates a lot of different kinds of intelligence. And then you've got the agent running, behavior-based agent running on the endpoint. Then you've got the logging, and you've got all this data, really, literally, terabytes of data of what's going on in your network. And the reality in the security space, this, right, is that all those alerts that people weren't looking at, right? There's so many hacks that we've gone back and said, well, our security tools were flagging the hack attempt right there, and just nobody noticed or nobody did anything about it. So what we've got to do is stop depending on human beings to react to those alerts that they see 1,000 of every day, and let the machine start to draw better conclusions. And I would say that's what Palo did with their XIM product. It's really sort of, I'd say CrowdStrike probably, sort of the same paradigm. Is it's not just about the agent on the endpoint. It's not just about the telemetry from the network. It's about bringing it all together and drawing better conclusions, and then taking the right remediation response. That's also a fairly important point. In the early days of a firewall, if I saw a connection go out to the internet on TCP port, whatever, and I could keep track of, a stateful firewall, I could keep track and make sure that packets returning from the internet were appropriate and part of an open connection. And that's all great. But if I saw something wrong with that connection, everything in security is either a sensor or an actuator, right? And in most cases, in a firewall, I have a sensor. I can sense when sequence numbers off, or a connection's coming in that's not authenticated or appropriate, or whatever it may be. But then I'm limited to the actions I can take. What do I do to mitigate it? So I can detect something on the firewall. I can take an action based on the firewall. And then IDS was the same thing in the early days of IDS. Is we, and Cisco had one. It helped me get into a product called NetRanger that became their IDS. And then Tipping Point came out and said, look, IDS is great. You can watch 1,000 logs a day if you want, but we're actually going to put a product in line and actually do something about it, not depend on the operator to look at an alert and take a reaction to it. Obviously, that's what we're still trying to do that as an industry, right? And so, IDS became IPS, and of course, Cisco came along with that. But you get all these different kinds of technology, and Cisco, just to get through, they had Okina products, they had Protega products, they had some fantastic products. But everything where you have a sensor is tied to that, or the sensor is tied to the actuator. Is if I detect something on this product, I can do something about it on this product. Well, what if, there's a couple different problems with that. What if I'm not sure on this single individual product, I think that's suspicious behavior, but I'm not sure. And now I can begin to correlate it with other products, login, network logs, firewall logs, endpoint data, Active Directory, whatever it may be. I can pull clues from there to try to make a better decision. That's what Splunk's doing, right? It's trying to pull data from a lot of different places and make better decisions. But again, with manual rules or user intervention, what we really want to get is we want to let the technology use AI techniques, machine learning techniques, and find those things. But then the next step beyond that we need to get to is now, once we've determined that something's wrong, we have to have a confidence level that, it's a big question right now, is automated response. Do you want your security operations tools to automatically take a mitigating action? And that's a decision customers have to make. The technology is good, but it's not perfect, right? But part of that correlation is what if we've decided that something bad is happening, and now the product can say, by the way, I detected that on the agent, the network, in the SaaS products, whatever it may be, but we think the right mitigation is to just simply go to your AD and shut down an account. Something as simple as that. Well, you need to be able to have that. You need to be able to figure that out on the fly, right? And again, a rules-based approach to that is okay, but it's not dynamic enough. It doesn't learn fast enough. And I would say that's the difference is being able to take multiple sensors to draw better conclusions that give you the confidence to automate your responses and then choose the appropriate mitigator, whatever that is inside of your network.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said better myself.
Well, thanks. And that's XIM. Again, not trying to be not trying to be a commercial for Palo Alto, but it is the thing that attracted me to go into Palo Alto. And in my 5 years there, sure enough, they actually built it out and deliver that, and it's pretty compelling. Again, there's competitors in the market, but I would say they led the way in that kind of approach.
I agree. And where do you go after Palo?
Collin College.
There you go.
Yeah.
Tell us more about your role.
I teach. Technology. I've always wanted to be. I mean, you heard from just me talking about what I used to do. I was always at the cutting edge of technology, whatever it is. So whether I was learning, which is with the case in the '90s, or ultimately when I went to vendors like Cisco and Palo Alto, where at Cisco we used to say an educated customer is a buying customer, which is true, because we made good stuff. Yeah. There's a business need for what we make. So really, a lot of the sales cycle is let's just go teach you what it is, how it works, how you can use it, and ultimately a PO will come out and the sales guys will get happy, right? And so I've just had that kind of teaching mentality for a long time in my role. And I started when I was still at Cisco. I started teaching for Oklahoma State, doing cybersecurity classes online for their computer science program. And I just love teaching. I love giving back to I love teaching the corporate customers, because I did that for a long time, but teaching young people, helping them find not just teach them the technology, but also just find their passion, whatever that is. Find their passion. Is this the right thing for you? Do you have an aptitude for it? And I enjoy that. So I long planned that when my kids got out of college, when I became an empty nester, which my second son graduated last year, mechanical engineering degree, and he's off into his career. And so I said, that enables me to now spend my time doing what I want to do, and that's teaching young people about technology.
That's awesome. So what really inspired you, or what made you choose Oklahoma State to get your career in teaching?
Well, that's where I taught, or that's where I went to school too. So
there you go. So you got some connections, a little nostalgia there.
Well, literally, it was yet another accident. And one of the things I talk at Collin College to the with everybody on their phones these days, not to sound like the old guy, right? But we all know that people are immersing themselves in their technology these days and not looking at the person across the table from them quite as much as they used to, right? And whether it's people working from home or all the different ways that manifests itself these days. And I try to tell them how important people are, right? And I can give you almost every important inflection point in my career. There's been a person that made a difference, that opened a door for me that I stepped through. And I would say that was Oklahoma State is the same way. As my oldest son surprised me and decided to go to Oklahoma State out of the blue. I was shocked. And so while he was there, I was up visiting him one time, and I walked in to talk to the dean of the computer science department, tell him thanks for my degree. And we got to talking, and he said, the thing we really aren't teaching our people that seems important is cybersecurity. And it says we have a hard time finding talent. I said, I'd love to teach. So long story short, he said, we can take these classes. They'd be better in person. But at the time, I live in Dallas and was working for Cisco and traveled a lot. He says, but we can try this class as an online class and see if it works for people. And sure enough, it did. People were hungry for the knowledge, and so they tolerated kind of the online format, which allowed me to kind of have a side hustle while I was at Cisco.
That's awesome. Do you remember what was it like building out the curriculum? How did you decide? Because again, security is so vast. There's so many topics. Yeah. How do you decide to funnel it down to the top ones? And how many hours was the class? What was the whole process like?
That's kind of a funny story. So I took over in a class. So there was a class number, and it was trying to think I think it was called Algorithms and Technology and Cybersecurity, something like that. It was kind of a gruesome name, and I talked to them about this is probably the applied security is probably really what we're trying to teach people who are doing computer science. And I took over from another professor, and again, he was moving on. He was moving to Chicago. I was taking over this class for him, and of course, we were going to evolve it to the online format, so everything was open to the possibility. And immediately, I got his training or his teaching materials, and I got the textbook, and I realized this would have been 2018. I was doing this. So I got the textbook, and the textbook was printed in 2002. And I said, right off the bat, I think we have a problem, because cybersecurity has clearly changed between 2002 and 18. And so we threw out the kind of the academic, and again, coming from the industry and coming from Cisco, I kind of told them, if you're teaching a cybersecurity degree, a full 4-year degree, we probably need to go into the algorithms. But if we're trying to teach people who are deploying applications how to do so in a secure manner, have an understanding, it's really about applied security. And so we went out and I'm trying to think of what there was an industry cert. Oh, it's the Security Plus. It was a CompTIA. So I grabbed that manual and I said, let's use this as training material. And it was really about how to apply security technologies to, endpoints, apps, data, cloud, network, all the things. And it was kind of a survey of how you can be secure across the different elements of your tech stack. And I think it was wildly popular.
That's awesome.
And very approachable, right? I laugh about algorithms because, I don't know who needs, next time you go to your bank and you turn on and you pop your browser up and you open a TLS connection, I'm not sure how much you care about how the AES algorithm works underneath there. There's probably a DLL that you don't need to know about, and that's the kind of thing that we were talking about. I said, really, let's talk about why it matters, not how the algorithm functions. About triple shifting block out crypto algorithms as opposed to anyway. It's a funny conversation. Anyway, so we got way more hands-on and pragmatic with the cybersecurity.
And then what was it like teaching online? Did you have like a live stream, or did you record it and then release it, or what was that like?
I tried it both ways. It's not ideal, and I know and since the COVID world, obviously the whole world has experimented with online training, and there's good and there's bad to it, of course, right? So the big thing online is, are we doing this on a WebEx class, so synchronous? Are we doing this live over WebEx, which most people live their lives on WebEx or Zoom or whatever technology they're using, Teams, or asynchronous. And I tried it both ways. I didn't like. I was traveling for Cisco a lot at the time, so it worked in my schedule better to do asynchronous. And by that, I would record lectures and have open office hours. I didn't find that nearly, from a personal satisfaction, I didn't find it very satisfying. I love being in the classroom. But but we would always have some sort of semester project, and so I'd go up to campus about once a month, and we would have an in-person meeting once a month. And I discovered, that's anybody who teaches knows teaching to a Zoom is not nearly as satisfying as teaching to a room full of people. I think that's probably a universal agreement everybody would agree with. And so I realized I love teaching, but I'm not loving this, teaching to a WebEx recording that I post. And anyway, I already knew that I probably wanted to teach live and in person whenever my career allows me to. But that was a good step in that direction. I learned how to build a curriculum. There was a lot of rigor. Product training when I was at Cisco is, if we had a new product and I wanted to teach Texas Instruments about a product, I'd go out and I'd say, hey, here's what the product's about, right? But in the academic world, there's a lot more rigor around making sure that you define your objectives and instructional design, which was a thing. I'm like, I have no idea what instructional design means. I had to learn a lot about that, and that was a good learning curve for me. That good stepping stone to where I am now.
I absolutely agree when you talk about how recording a lecture is one thing, but even if you have a live stream of a lecture, kind of like meetings online, it's very efficient in terms of time optimization.
Sure.
No one needs to go anywhere, but you do have to wonder how many of them have 3 or 4 monitors with Tetris or YouTube or other crap on there. It's like,
they're multitasking.
Yeah, multitasking. One of my first engineers years ago, Robert Wiggs, great guy, he said, Topping, you can't multitask. You're half-assing 2 things, which I had to admit, I don't have the personality working to do it. So it's like, I count with 80 to 90% of people on conference calls are barely paying attention. It's like, in person is so much more effective.
They're waiting to hear their name called.
Precisely.
Yeah. And I would say, just as an instructor too, it was bad for me too, because I realized, because there would be times I was recording a lecture that I'm literally sitting in my office at night recording a WebEx that there's nobody on, and I go monotone. I start my mind wanders. I blah 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 a little bit. I'm like, but if I actually was doing a live session and recording it, that made all the difference in the world. So anyway, that was a big difference.
And what was it like going to Collin College and then teaching in person? How much more do you like that?
Oh, I like it a lot. I love being in front of the class. So as we talked before the podcast, though, unfortunately, my back is giving me trouble. I'm finding that a 5-hour class, my back hurts after standing at the front of the class. But it's very energizing, and I love teaching. Right, I love the stupid questions, the career questions, the rando comments. I'll take it all. It's fun to be there.
What's the weirdest question you've gotten?
Weirdest
or most hilarious? There's no such thing as dumb questions, but there are some hilarious ones for sure.
Well, sometimes dumb questions are hilarious. I hate to admit that sometimes I might go home and, I may or may not be able to tell my wife. I'm like, well, I got this one dumb question because she's not a technology person. But my son, ironically, my son works for Palo Alto as well. So sometimes I get a cybersecurity question. I go, hey, Andrew, you wouldn't believe what somebody asked me today. And we'll get a big nerd giggle out of that. But you're right. I mean, it's like I don't even like saying that on a recording because there is no dumb question, right? And that's the kind of thing that I would want to foster in the students is there is no dumb question because you're here to learn. And if you don't know, somebody next to you also doesn't know, but they're afraid to ask. And so that's a real important cultural thing that you want in your classroom, right?
It's an age-old cliche saying, but yeah, the only dumb questions are the ones that are not asked.
Exactly.
And what was it? A couple of my professors used to really drive the point home of, if you feel nervous to ask a question, don't, because we guarantee you at least 2 other people in the audience have the same thing, if not more.
Yeah.
But they're just too nervous or they don't care to actually ask the question. So I always tell people more questions is better.
Yeah.
It's all about just learning experience.
The one thing I'll say is not really a dumb question, but I did have one semester where it was the second week of class, and I want to say it was after probably my 3rd classroom period. It was probably like a Wednesday of that second week, and I get an email from one of the students who hadn't shown up yet, and he was kind of rude. He was kind of pointed about, hey, I was at the classroom yet again today. Why is nobody in the class? I was like, and I said, well, because you're in the wrong building. He literally was on the wrong campus. And then he went further to kind of chew me out for posting the wrong location. I said, if 23 other people all got there and you didn't get there, are you really chewing me out about this? And I challenged him. I said, hey, please show me. I'm like, and it's possible because I take over classes in the way a Canvas teaching, an instruction management tool. A lot of times you'll copy a class from a previous semester and mistakes get made. No doubt about that. Usually with dates.
We're all human.
Not locations. And I said, hey, I may have missed a spot where I mentioned the wrong campus. Please show me where it is. Of course, he never
responded.
He never came back. Yeah, he couldn't find one place, but somehow he decided it was another campus. So that's a stupid question because he was
ignorant,
rude about it.
Well, also the real question is, did he ever actually find his way to class, or did he give up?
He did. I don't honestly remember, but I would not be surprised if that's a guy who may have dropped and not gotten through the semester. So I don't honestly remember.
That'd be a funny reason. Why do you drop out of class? I couldn't find it.
Yeah. Because I kept sitting in the classroom and nobody showed up. Anyway, so that's.
I would get lost, but not because I got the wrong classroom, just because I suck at directions. So I might get the right address, but I might show town next door without the GPS technologies.
Yeah.
Then what was it like building out the whole? Was it similar to Oklahoma? Did you build out a whole entire curriculum again? Where did you choose to focus at Collin College?
So Collin, I didn't have to build anything myself. Everything was ready to go at Collin because they have a cybersecurity degree. They have numerous degrees. They have a 2-year applied technology degree, and frankly, some of the classes I teach are part of. They have a biomed degree that some of the classes I teach are actually required for biomed, different kind of technology. But they're all ready to go, right? Mm-hmm. They're the classes I teach. There's half dozen instructors or more, and probably 20 different sections of it. So there's nothing for me to develop. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma State was that one opportunity. I said, okay, let's take this curriculum and leap forward 20 years and change things at OSU.
That's awesome. And what's your favorite part about working at Collin College?
Oh, the kids, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's really the only answer, right? Is helping somebody, and anybody who's ever taught out there knows, there's the kids that frustrate you, there's the kids who don't say a word, and there's the couple of kids that really show that they've gotten something out of your class, and that's what brings you back every time. Whether you're a junior high teacher, I've got a lot of friends that are primary school teachers, and college is the same way. Is there's 2 or 3 or 4 students that make you feel good about your semester. There's 2 or 3 or 4 students that make you pull your hair out. And there's a bunch of guys that just come and go in the class, and you wish you could reach more of them. But that's education,
What are a couple of your favorite success stories of those exceptional students where you really just felt, I really made an impact on their life, or I really saw them grow and improve?
Well, there was one kid. So he was. I think probably he had set out a year. So let's picture a 19-year-old that didn't go off to college, sat out a year. Maybe he's slinging pizzas or something like that. Who knows? And decided to go to IT. And he had passion for IT. He thought, this is really cool. There's so many kids today that high school guidance counselors tell them, if you love video games, then you should go into programming or something like that. I hate that. It's the worst advice. I get mad every time I hear that kind of thing. But that was kind of him. He had kind of had this vague idea that he kind of liked technology and he kind of might like to go that direction. And I had him certainly his first year. I don't remember if it was the first semester. And I started the first week of class. I tell some of the stories that that we talk about here is like things that have made a difference in my career. And one of them I would tell the kids is curiosity, right? Go and find it. If you're a little bit interested, don't just do the thing that you had to do. Go and learn the two other things right next to it, right? The adjacent things. Or if you're curious about something, take the time to explore it. And also in IT, you can show some initiative, and that's how you get the role, right? The importance of people and raising your hand, and again, because unfortunately technology and COVID, a lot of the young people these days, they socialize differently than we did even 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And I told him and he said, I work at this place. I don't remember what he did, but he did something not technology. He says, but I know they have an IT help desk there. And I said, I met the guy who hires, like the IT manager at this place. I said, well, just ask him to get 15 minutes of his time. Go ask to sit down with the guy and say, look, I know I don't remember what the guy was doing, slinging pizzas, metaphorically speaking. I says, but I really want to get in IT. He says, what do you think the key is? Just ask him questions about how do I get into the team, whatever. And the guy gave him a job, gave him a help desk job, and he gave him, I'm sure the IT manager, I think he gave him a grunt level IT job. He might have been paying him pizza slinging money to be a help desk guy or support the help desk. And he said, just figure it out. But he took a chance in there. The guy showed initiative, showed a little moxie, and the guy gave him a chance. And so really his first year, he says, I still got to finish my degree, but I already have my first IT job. And I said,
that's awesome.
That's going to be an like something like that. And the fact that I literally, he said, look, 2 weeks ago, you told me this, you said this in class, and I went to work and I did that. And now I'm starting in a really grunt level, entry level position, but yet that's how we all start, right? And
hell yeah, that's awesome.
So those things are awesome, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a lot of jobs, the hardest part is just getting that foot in the door, that one opportunity, and just having the moxie or having the grit. And again, if you never ask, you never know.
Yeah.
It's like I always tell people, like, just go for it. The worst you can do is say no. Well, they might insult you pejoratively, but the worst thing at the end of the day is they say no.
Absolutely.
But that's awesome. That's one of the coolest ways to get in IT. Do you have any funny stories or smart Alex in the class or anyone asking really comical questions perhaps?
Nothing's coming to mind off the top of my head.
Anyone ask you how do we program BlackBerry or deploy BlackBerry server?
I did have probably got to be careful telling stories. I don't want anybody to recognize it. You never know. But I did have one guy, and he's funny. He was like, he would have proved me stories. He's a Russian kid. And he had the moxie, right? He had a lot of big personality, a lot of energy, asked a lot of questions. He was smart. He was the guy that I had to, when you're asking questions of the class, he's the first guy to raise his hand. I had to actually talk to him. I said, okay, man, let some other people answer the questions. But he had a big personality. I said, well, how'd you come to be here? Because this guy's like 19 years old, and he literally grew up he came from Siberia. So not even like Moscow, St. Pete. Yeah. He was out in the boonies, right?
Yeah.
And he said, God sent him. I'm like, well, this is an interesting story. He said, look, I was doing nothing, and I was, knocking around. And he says, God told me to come to America and learn cybersecurity. I'm like, that's strange, but
obviously
glad you're here.
Awesome, yeah.
And obviously, and I'm teaching him class. And I go, you've clearly got it. You're going to do well. So I'm glad God sent you. But,
that's awesome.
Kind of a funny story that guy came from Siberia because God sent him. So that was kind of unique.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to say, you chose a pretty good country.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of tech opportunity in the United States. I don't know a lot about Siberia. I know it's cold.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
It's a big place.
Oh, yeah. And what do you like to do outside the office?
Well, I love sports in general. I played soccer most of my life, which I valued. Unfortunately, my body finally told me maybe soccer is something I need to tap the brakes on. But my wife and I scuba dive. I love that. We love travel.
Scuba. That's pretty unique. How do you get into that? Do you get the certifications? How do you get into that hobby? That's unique.
It was, I actually say it was really trendy I guess it was probably the 90s at Cisco. A lot of engineers that were starting to have a little bit of Cisco money in the early days. And so it was trendy at Cisco. A lot of people running out getting their certs. In fact, there's a place called Scuba Toys that was, they were an early digitization project, right? They were just a scuba shop, and they wanted to go online. Mm-hmm. And so they literally put like pan, tilt, zoom cameras and connected the whole experience so they could sell things online, live sales guys. Like somebody could get on and go, we'll go over and show them, hey, here's the BC, here, I'll try it on for you, whatever, for the camera, and then ship it to them, right? Anyway, so.
That's awesome, especially for in the 90s they were doing that?
Yeah, that would have been, I'm trying to, yeah.
That's really innovative.
You get older, the years start to blur. I'm trying to think of what year that would have been. That probably would have been 98, 99, something like that.
I mean,
pretty early on.
Even back then, I just remember static websites like actionvillage.com for like paintball gear and stuff like that. It's just still images. That's really cool.
It might have been the early aughts. I might be off still, a few years. But back on my wife, though, so or how I got into it in the first place, when I got married, I realized I like to do things. I like the mountains. I like doing things like hiking, skiing, whatever it is. And my wife liked to lay on the beach, and I found laying on the beach really boring. So we literally went on a vacation once, and we talked about going. We'd done some resort scuba diving, and I said, well, let's get our certification. So we did all the book work and the pool work for the entry-level cert.
So what was that like, or how many hours in class? And I always wondered, is it a proficiency exam as well as a written exam? And you have to have your own gear. What was
so the
like?
First open water thing, you can sign up for any class anywhere nearby. They they'll give you all the gear usually, and there's book work to it. You sit down and study a book. I'm trying to think, probably a typical program you might spend maybe 4 nights in a classroom, pass a test, then you get a little bit of a skills training where you go into a swimming pool and you do things like take your mask off, figure out how to blow the air out, put your mask back on, basic stuff, how to manage your, take your gear off and adjust it and then put it back on while underwater. Just real basic things to try not to die. And you do all that in a scuba shop someplace or a swimming pool nearby, and then ultimately for your entry-level cert, you have to go out and do 4 open water dives out in the actual ocean, or what in Texas, a lot of places will go to a lake, like Travis Lake down around Austin, or there's a place out east of Dallas called Scuba Ranch where they do them like that. And those those aren't the places you really want to dive. So my wife and I made the deal. We're going to go do all the book work and the pool work at the local scuba shop, and then we're going to go to where do we go? St. Lucia. And we're going to get the local instructor there to just take us out for our open water dives. And I remember the conversation. My wife said, okay, look, we're going to go out. We're going to go 2 days out in the water, and then to meet our certification requirements to get our dives out of the way. And then we might go, maybe just one more day, we might go dive. But then other than that, I just want to relax, read a book, be by the beach, whatever. And I said, oh, okay, that's cool. But then literally the first day we came up out of the ocean, my wife says, I want to do this every single day we're here. And probably ever since then, if her and I are staying on a beach, we go blow bubbles pretty much every day. So to me, that was our compromise. My wife likes the beach. I like doing things. Scuba was the ultimate marriage hobby.
That's awesome. Where have you gone scuba? What kind of stuff have you seen?
Probably. So when I retired from Palo last year, my bucket list trip, we went to the Great Barrier Reef, right?
Oh, really?
And, Great Barrier Reef gets built up. There's a lot of things in life. When somebody tells you, if I tell you, hey, there's a movie out right now, and it's the best movie I've ever seen, you go see it, you're probably going to be a little disappointed because it doesn't live up to the expectations.
Yeah.
Great Barrier Reef being something that everybody knows, I expected it to not live up to my expectations, and it exceeded them.
Really?
So we went there last fall. We went to the Great Barrier Reef and went to Bali and dove out there. We do liveaboards, so you can actually, you can always get a boat that goes out from the shore and you can see something. But when you get on the liveaboard ships that go out, and in our case, we go around kind of the outside of the reef, you see different stuff, right, and less human beings. So probably the coolest thing I saw was technically it wasn't even on the Great Barrier Reef. There's a place called the Osprey Island. It's out in the Coral Sea, and I remember we were dove on the reef, and then overnight we had to steam out to this island, and it's this pinnacle, I think in like 4,000 feet of water sticking up in the middle of the Coral Sea. And one of the things they have there is one of the few places that they feed sharks in the world, like for scientific purposes, right? Mm-hmm. Where they'll tag sharks and feed them on the regular and count them, do inventories, things like that. And it's a pretty compelling thing to see them feed sharks like that. I mean, there's a lot of places where they'll feed reef sharks or something for the tourists. That's just that's a different animal. So we went out there, and it was kind of cool. They set you down. There's a little place, they called it the arena because there's kind of an arena-shaped coral formation and a big coral head right in the middle of it. And they bring all the people down first, and they say, okay, you got to go sit in the sand. You put your back against the reef, sit in the sand, take extra weight down because you don't want to float up. And then we're going to bring down these cages with giant chunks of tuna, like 20-pound chunks of tuna. And you see the sharks start to circle, and it's probably 20 different sharks circling, different kinds. Some of the, the little reef sharks that, people go, oh, it's a shark, but it's really not a danger shark, as well as the big barrel, the tiger sharks and things like that that are a little more predatorial. and they're all swimming around. It's a great photo op, and you're going, oh, this is really cool. This is really interesting. And then I remember the guy pulling the cable to release those chunks of tuna, and I've never seen the Wild Kingdom's carnage like that. The frenzy of these sharks tearing up that tuna, 20 yards away right in front of your eyes. That's probably, I'll always remember that. That was a pretty compelling thing to see.
That's incredible.
It was kind of cool, right? Like I said, there's a lot of places where you can go feed stingrays, or they'll feed some local nurse sharks or something like that. But that was a fairly unique experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And where was that again?
It's a place called, it's off the Great Barrier Reef. It's called Osprey Island. It's a little, David Attenborough, the British journalist, he's actually got a one that he talks about Osprey Island, but it's out in the middle of the Coral Sea, probably, I don't know how many miles out we were from the actual Great Barrier Reef, but I'm guessing we were probably 50 to 100 miles out from the actual reef, kind of just. And the thing that's unique about it is, I was watching the David Attenborough special before we went, and they show kind of the 3D thing. And here's what the Coral Sea looks, with the water, and they show this little pinnacle, this little island. I don't remember how it formed. It was, it was a really unusual looking little peak of land out in the middle of water that's thousands of feet deep. So obviously you get the big stuff out there. And it was just out from the Great Barrier Reef.
That's awesome.
It was pretty cool.
What else did you do outside the office? I was going to say, I don't know what can top that. That's a pretty unique story.
Yeah, that was pretty fun. And so that's my thing. So we're going in the spring. We're going to Thailand. We're going to do the same thing, do a liveaboard off the west shore of Thailand. I have no idea what we'll see out there, but it'll be awesome. Other things out of life, I mean, honestly, teaching is kind of what I do these days. I kind of powered down a little bit. I got a place up in the mountains up at Broken Bow, Oklahoma. I love being up there and just kind of doing the untechnology experience. It's quiet. There's not quite as many RF waves bouncing around. And
Right.
It feels nice to be up there. And that's it. Simple life these days. And podcasts. Turns out now I do podcasts.
I was going to say, now you can add that to the list. That's awesome. Well, we'll appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Hey, no problem.
Glad to have you on soon.
Thanks for having me.
Likewise. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in. Don't forget to take time to like, subscribe, and comment. Also, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, anyone, everyone. Y'all stay safe. You have a great day. Topping Talks.